Hello, my name is Kiriath, and it's time for us to finish the Eldar range review. Dear Lord, this got away from me. I'll be honest, the last couple of weeks have just been a bit weird. So, we did the first bit, and then there was like the Aspect Warriors and a few Phoenix Lords and stuff that we didn't get round to, because otherwise the video would have been like a feature film length thing. And I meant to do it like 2 days later, and then it just didn't happen. But it's fine, we're back. We're going to finish it off right now, and we're starting with the Dark Reapers. It is, as I say, mostly Aspect Warriors, of course excluding Jane's Art and the Howling Banshees. They were at the start of the previous one. I have to say, the Dark Reapers, I think, have aged pretty damn well. They still look pretty decent. There's maybe a little bit of, lack of definition in certain areas, but for the most part, I think they look pretty damn solid. The armour is held up nicely. There's some held up nicely is what I meant to say. There's some nice detail with the plates. It makes it look a little bit heavier, that kind of dividing line on the shin there, which adds quite a bit of bulk, but it's not too bulky. It's not over the top, not excessive. Although, I will say that I think this has been photographed a bit harshly in a way. Some of the lines look really rough, but it feels like it's a little bit over-contrasted when like the photo is taken, perhaps. Because some of it seems uneven, but I don't know that it actually is all that uneven, because the rest of it's fine. There's some little bits that could perhaps be just higher detail. You know, they are older sculpts. Oh lord, they're older sculpts. For the most part, I think they've held up pretty well. The hair is actually not bad. Actually pretty decent. They sometimes, especially on kind of third edition and second to third edition models that are still around now, the hair can tend to be just not great. A bit lumpy, a bit weird. Actually not the case here. Looks okay. That's the skull on the shoulder looks okay. It's perhaps a little cartoony, but it's otherwise not too bad. The way the eyes have been painted is a bit weird, because it's been painted as though it's got actual eyes, which I don't know that I like the way that's been done. That's not the model though, that's just the paint job. The main thing I'm not sure about is the faces on the helmets, actually, looking at it. I feel like the actual faces could do with just that little bit more detail, that little bit more definition. But other than that, honestly, for the most part, hair looks a little bit dodgy on the one on the back there, looking at it, but it's honestly pretty decent, the Dark Reapers. I think this is the same situation with the Howling Banshees. The Howling Banshees still look decent. They just needed to be updated. They need to be, brought up to the same level of detail, the same quality that we see from everything else that Games Workshop does these days. And I think it's the same thing with the Dark Reapers. I'll say the actual design of them, I still really like. As I say, the kind of segmented feel of the armour in certain places does a really good job of making them look kind of more heavily armoured, but still quite lithe and still very Eldar. There are some bits that are a bit rough, like how thick that bit of armour/cloth is a bit crazy, but I would imagine that is largely down to the restrictions of the material as a whole at the time that this was made. Make that a bit more reasonable, it'd be good to go. I mean, overall, they're pretty solid still. They're pretty solid. Just need to be brought up to date. The faces need more detail, more definition. The armour just needs to be cleaned up that little bit. It's all about just making it more, I almost want to say like high def, but that's not really the right phrase. But you get what I mean. Okay, Swooping Hawks. The Swooping Hawks are a weird one, because I feel like the poses were decent for the time, but they've aged a bit weirdly now. I feel like you could do some really, really cool poses with these guys. Although, in fairness, they're not bad. I wouldn't say they're bad. There is, of course, a lot of repetition going on here. There's 6 in the squad, and you've got just 2 poses repeated, which is a little bit. Actually, no, that's not fair. The leg poses are repeated. The leader of the squad has obviously got a slightly different look with the gun facing up, but the head looking straight ahead with the finger pointing. But I don't know, I think them all being on the ground looks a little strange. I feel like a bit more dynamic, a bit more variation would be nice. Although then again, would you even get that from a redesign now? Because poses are still pretty static in some respects. I mean, think about the I've totally forgotten the name of them. The penitentiary, and the arco-flagellants from the Sisters of Battle range. There's some repeated poses in there, so I don't know that necessarily that would be something that changed for a reimagining of the Swooping Hawks. To me, they definitely look like they could use a bit more of an update, just because I think the proportions are a little bit strange in some areas. There's quite a thick amount of armor around the forearm, which actually makes the forearm look about the same size as the midriff and the waist, which that should not be a thing. That's pretty risky. They seem slim even by the standards of Eldar, but certain parts of the armor are bulky in ways that other bits aren't, which kind of make certain parts of them look a bit too chunky, or other bits a bit too slim. The helmets, I get the idea, not particularly a fan. I think that's something that could be executed way better now. And I will definitely say that this particular group of pictures to form the spinny is massively oversaturated. Like the settings on the camera could not have been right for that. It's way too bright. The contrast is way too high. It makes everything a bit too harsh and a bit, you lose the helmet in the background of the page in some sections, almost. You can just about make the outline out, but not much else. That's not done this model any favours, because it makes everything look a lot more stark and glaring. The guns actually look pretty rough. Just looking at the one holding it there, they look super low detail and super bland. Just bland, really bland. Feels like there's been a bit of an attempt to make like a bit of a beak at the end there, which is absolutely not necessary. Yeah, I feel like the Swooping Hawks definitely need more love than the Dark Reapers do. I feel like you could just remake the Dark Reapers in the same way that the Howling Banshees remade. I feel like the Swooping Hawks would need a bit more care and a bit more alteration. They're altogether a bit too skinny, a bit too lanky. The heads are a bit too chunky. There's certain parts of the armor that just accentuate the rest of the body, but not in a positive way. The proportions are just too far off. They're just too far off. Yeah, we could definitely do with a bit more work, those, if and when they get replaced. I would hope they are at some point, but we'll have to wait and see, won't we? Striking Scorpions, I feel, they've, like the Dark Reapers, they've aged pretty well. They could do with maybe being a bit less squat. The legs being as far apart as they are is kind of taking the height down a little bit, which is kind of unfortunate because they feel like they would be a lot more imposing if they were stood a little bit taller. Again, it's mostly down to the age of the sculpts. But apart from that, I actually think these, again, look pretty damn decent. The helmets, because they're a bit more simple, and it's not got like kind of distinct features in the way that like the Dark Reapers have, where you've got like a distinct mouth and eyes and so on. Because the helmets are more like helmets and less like naturally occurring faces, so to speak. The detail on them feels pretty decent. Pretty right, to be honest. The the one hand being an actual claw is perhaps a little on the nose. I don't know that that's something that you would need to carry over. I mean, I know they're called Striking Scorpions, but I don't know. That feels just not Eldar to me. Like in all the other stuff that Eldar have had, that feels like very much a kind of gimmicky holdover that I don't know would be repeated, to be totally honest with you. I don't know a huge amount about the Striking Scorpions, other than them obviously being melee close combat specialists, since they're all armed with chainswords, and in this case, a power claw. Like a literal power claw. That's kind of funny. The hair again, I think is pretty good because it's that stylized thing of it's got things in it, so like the little gems and the kind of what I'd assume would be like tubes going around it. It looks pretty decent. Wow, they've gone to a lot of effort to highlight a bit of the old arse cheek there, haven't they? The armor itself does look cool. See, I do like these quite a lot. As I say, if they maybe were standing a little bit taller, if the legs weren't quite as bowed, were a bit straighter, these have the same issue that the old tactical marines have. Like they just look a little bit squat, whereas they don't need to look squat. Overall, the detail feels pretty good. Yeah, not bad actually. Not bad. Pretty solid. Wow, that's very heavily a very heavily detailed arse again there. Not really sure about that, but sure. Like, a good example here of the hair coming out the back of the helmet. It's a really cool look, and it actually still holds up. The hair could maybe be a bit more detailed, but overall, pretty solid, the Striking Scorpions. Again, same situation as the Howling Banshees. Did I say Howling Scorpions? Striking Scorpions. Same situation as the Howling Banshees. I think just an update would do them absolutely fine. But I do like them. Again, there's something to be said, I think, about just the overall design of the Aspect Warriors for the Eldar range. I think Games Workshop nailed it pretty much straight off the bat. They did a great job straight off the bat. And as such, the only thing that is wrong with these models is that they're just old. That's it. I think design-wise, they still hold up. The Swooping Hawks definitely feel like the weakest. You know, compare them to the Dark Reapers and the Striking Scorpions. Admittedly, the colour scheme on the Swooping Hawks and the Striking Scorpions aren't doing a huge amount for them. They are very much painted in the style of that particular era of Games Workshop, which in some ways doesn't do them a huge number of favours. But like the Dark Reapers, the Striking Scorpions, and the Warp Spiders, they still hold up as models. They still look good. With the Warp Spiders, again, you could easily add a little bit of extra height by bringing the legs a little bit closer together. The overall design is still cool. They're maybe a bit squat and a little bit squished in a way. If there was a way to expand them out slightly, just to kind of increase that intimidation factor. I always think the Warp Spiders have got like a really cool, intimidating presence. There's something about the size of the helmets, like the kind of asymmetrical nature of them, where you've got the tube down one side and you've got the kind of hair down the other side. The large kind of shoulders that come over, like almost from around the back of the head, pretty much. I feel like they have a properly intimidating silhouette. The back could probably do with a bit more detail, to be fair. That's quite plain now. I think that would look quite plain, stood next to a lot of the, especially like a lot of the newer sculpts. Don't go like crazy with it. Don't go massively over detailed, but a bit of something, whether it's some gemstones, whether it's like an actual mechanism that is visible, would, I think, make a big difference to the back of these guys. And it would also break it up because it's quite plain as it stands. And it's a heavy contrast to the front. It feels like there's a good amount going on at the front. There's a nice amount of detail, but then you spin it round and the back it almost looks a bit lazy. Probably not a fair comment, but that's kind of the general look that I get, especially compared to like this front view. I will say that pose is perhaps a little off now. Can kind of see what they were going for, but it's a little it's a little rough, and it's also, I have to say, looking now, not 100% clear what's going on. It takes you a second to realise that the arms are being held up with the blades, and then you've got the weapons from the arms connected to the carapace coming around the sides. It's not I wouldn't say it's a completely coherent pose. It's not something where you just glance at it and go, oh, I know what's going on. It takes you a second. Some of that could be down to a slight lack of detail. But yeah, again, it's just the back is a bit too plain. But I think mostly warp spiders look decent. They hold up. Just need that refresher touch. Now the Rangers, I still really like. I still really like the Rangers. The only complaint I have is maybe the heads on some of them, but apart from that, they are pretty solid. They are pretty solid. I mean, you can't really go wrong when it comes to snipers. You giving them a cloak, giving them obviously some form of sniper rifle, kind of important. But with that basic kind of formula, it's really difficult to get them wrong, and the Rangers are no exception to that. They're not massively complicated. They're, in a way, I would argue they're kind of generic. I mean, things like Space Marine scout snipers and the not infiltrators, not intercept, not whichever Primaris unit is the the sniper eliminator. That's it. It's getting to the point now where I have to sit there and go, okay, was it a more recent one? Okay, so it's not the intercessor, interceptor, infiltrator, in whatever. It's just getting ridiculous now. Yeah, they all kind of have a similar silhouette because, well, a person in cloak holding gun, there's only so much you can do with. The Rangers are, of course, a much older example of this stuff, but again, I don't know that there's much you'd need to do to bring them up to date. Maybe just increase a bit of the detail. Even then, I think the cloaks look decent. They're not massively thick. They're not like stupidly bulky or anything. They're a decent size. Honestly, I mean, I just want, what I really want is for these to just be brought up into just made more modern. You don't even need to change that much. Just make them more modern. Okay, now we're getting on to the Phoenix Lords here, and admittedly, some of the Phoenix Lords really do need more than just a refresher. A lot of the HQs from a lot of the armies that are still using those, like, third or even in some cases, like, are there still any second edition skulls lying around? I'm trying to think. Someone's going to tell me that this is one of them. Someone did very helpfully put a link in one of the videos that showed the like a big old list of when stuff was released, like when it was first released by Games Workshop, which I went to bookmark, and then when I went to bookmark it, it had been removed for being spam or something, and then I could not find it again. So if that was you, I really just punched a Coke can, I do apologise. If that was you, then please, by all means, either tweet it at me or put it in the comments again, and I'll keep an eye out for it and make sure that I actually note it down this time. I mean, yeah, Phoenix Lord Karandras desperately needs a glow-up. He's got giant hat syndrome, where the hat is like the same height as the rest of his body, which does not look right given how squat he is. He's got the issue where the torso and the waist are way too short. The legs are a bit too far apart and a little bit too bent, so he looks kind of squat. The pose is really not dynamic at all. It's just not aged well, this. It's not clear. There's too much going on, and none of it makes a huge amount of sense. Like, is at a glance for this model, the pose is really static. The sword is held in a what looks like quite uncomfortable and sort of weird way. The head and the helmet just doesn't make any sense from the front. You need to turn it round to see that. I mean, I'm assuming that those things on the side of his face are guns. I could be wrong. It's, I have to say, I'm not feeling Karandras. I just don't think it looks great. Phoenix Lord Furagun has a similar issue in terms of pose. In fact, when we... hang on a sec. That's because they've got pretty much not the same pose. That's not fair. That's not fair. There's, of course, similarities, but then there would be. Again, just not aged great. The size of the gun is hilarious. I love it. Look at the size of it. Look at the stock is down past his knees whilst he's holding it like that. That is ridiculous. Would that even work? Is that stock too long to even be usable, looking at it? Because if you look at his arm, he's already got his, his forearm is obviously extended, as it would be. If he held that straight out, I don't know, well, do you suppose across the body onto the other shoulder? Yeah, maybe, sort of. I mean, it's going to press into his weird clasp thing and his strange shoulder that's highly decorated, which is... Oh, that's what happened. That's what's happened on the other side. It's been lifted up by the gun, kind of. Yeah. No. Yeah. Oh, this is not great. This is not great. And what a confusing like layout. Because you've got the axe in the other hand. With the... This one doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, I don't know why I'm struggling so hard with this. I'm sure there'll be some of you who are like, what's the problem? Just take a moment, right? The axe is plugged into his armour. He's holding the gun and the axe. There is no visible method for him to stow the axe in any way. The way he's holding it, and also with the cable attached to it, surely that would make moving it around even more tricky, like stowing it for using the gun. Unless he's using the gun one-handed, in which case, why has he got a gigantic stock on the end of it? The hat, again, is the same size as the rest of the body. Exactly the same issue. It's exactly the same issue with the hat. I mean, obviously we know the bigger the hat, the more important the character, but it needs to at least look like it would survive walking through a doorway. Otherwise it just gets silly. Yeah, again, Lord Fugan needs a serious rework. Just looks weird. Doesn't work for me at all. Lord Azerman is... sure. Again, we've got the same issue with the hat. I'm so glad the hat thing isn't quite as ridiculous as it used to be. I mean, it really was a thing for a while, wasn't it? Where you just knew how important someone was because of the ridiculous size of the hat. Things have chilled out. Things have calmed down. Yes, Jane Czar has still got an absurd amount of hair. But somehow it doesn't look silly. This is just a step too far, Just a step too far. The pose is a little more in action than the other two. He's got his wrist-mounted shuriken catapult there, facing a target, actually aiming down it. The face is rough. That face is... Yee. Good lord. That needs a severe... Oh, man. It's all wonky as well. Is it meant to be wonky? I don't think that's meant to be his actual face. Unless he's got something severely wrong with his mouth. And eyes. Yeah, no. Yeah. These three just feel very much products of their time, don't they? They've not aged well. Although it's not often you see a proper back banner anymore. You've got to show appreciation for the back banner when you see it. Phoenix Lord Boweroff has exactly the Boweroff, whichever you fancy. It has exactly the same issue as the rest of the Swooping Hawks, really. Just a kind of weird shaped body. Maybe not quite to the same severity. He's a bit more chunky. There's more chunk. There's more chunk going on in the chest and the kind of waist area there, which does make a bit of a difference. The helmet looks Slightly better for being in that colour scheme, actually. It almost feels like there's a bit of an Egyptian thing going on with the shoulders and the chest ornamentation there, and the sword, which is a weird clash in a way. Pose is a little bit rough. That gun is wonky as anything. That's massive. What the hell? The feathers, they're all right. They're okay. They've aged okay. I'd say, again, it's a similar thing with the rest of the Swooping Hawk stuff. There's just something about that it doesn't quite work and just looks very dated at this point. Which makes sense, because these are old as hell models. They are old. Like, old. I love Phoenix Lord Morganra. He's, again, could do with a little bit of work here and there, but I think he is one of the more solid ones. I think he's one of the ones who's aged the best, just because he is a big, squat, girthy lad with a giant gun. The gun, I would argue, looks cool. I don't think there's anything wrong with the gun, in fact. That is a gun that has aged pretty damn well. It's big, but it's also got a scythe blade, so, who's going to complain about that? The shoulder pad that is a skull has aged pretty well. I'd argue the kind of power pack on the back there, maybe it's just the way it's painted. It looks like it should be more detailed than it is. There is a fair bit of detail on there. It's just all been done in black. Maybe a bit more bone would help slightly with that. He doesn't have a silly hat. He's got a skull hat, which is fine. And instead of having like a big tall hat, he's got a big tall banner. Instead of having both a big tall banner and a big tall hat, which is just overkill. I think he's aged pretty decently. The detail on the little bones across the shins and on the feet hold up. So do the ones on the arms too. The knees being painted bone colour is not something that I would do with this model personally. I would make them black to emphasise the bone in the front of the shin and along the side of the legs. But that's just me. Although I think that would improve the look of it slightly. But then I would say that because that's how I do it, so kind of a moot point, really, isn't it? Yeah, overall, I think he's aged pretty decently, and I think if there was a new version of him, he would be even chunkier than he is now. I think it'd be even chunkier and even more deathly. And I think it would be kind of fun to see what they do with him, actually. If they kept with this general theme, didn't overdo it, but just brought up the detail a bit, that'd be kind of cool. Make him just a bit taller. A bit more suitable for a man of his stature. Then we have Prince Uriel, who actually looks okay. Actually looks okay. If you look at how more properly proportioned he is, it does a huge amount for these models. Just properly giving them the proportions needed. Like, the striking scorpions look decent, but they don't have the same kind of proportions as him. And he just looks better. Taller, more detailed, just all round. The silhouette works way better. There's some nice detail on here as well. There is some very nice detail. Also, I do like the colour scheme as well. Someone's done a good job on that. The weapon looks great. I like the touch of the kind of paper hanging off the spear, flowing in the same direction as the twin banners on the back. The twin banners on the back, actually, I don't know if I like or not. I don't think I do. But the rest of the model's decent. The rest of it looks cool. Yeah, not bad. Not bad, that one. And Illic Nightspear, I think, it's actually aged alright. It's actually aged pretty decently. The only complaint I've got is that maybe the head could be a bit better. It could just be, I feel, a bit more detailed. Although, is that even fair? The hair's pretty nicely done. It's not lumpy or like messed up or mangled. The mask over the face. The only issue with the mask over the face is that it looks like his nose would just be completely flat, which is a bit weird. But actually, being able to rotate it... No, there's nothing wrong with his head, actually. I think it's just a weird, unfortunate angle on this one. It makes it look a bit wonky, but I think that's just the angle at which that photo has been taken. If you spin him round, it's not wonky at all. It is pretty well sculpted. Nice, solid pose. Good placement on the gun. The kind of implication that he's like light on his feet, with the way that the two fingers are resting on the rock instead of the whole palm. That's quite a nice touch. Yeah, all in all, that's pretty solid. That is a pretty cool model. That is holding up nicely, that one. And finally, because I think we missed this last time, you're going to tell me I've missed something else, and I'm going to be really irritated because I made a specific list. Mind you, that doesn't guarantee anything, does it? Just means that I got the list wrong if I did miss something else out. The Eldar Autarch, which I don't think we covered last time, which overall decent model, just the pose, because it's jumping off a bit of scenery again, which is just, I'm just getting so sick of that now. Is it jumping off? Is it landing on? It's very difficult to tell. The fact that it's difficult to tell means that I don't think it's a great pose. It's got to be jumping off or falling over backwards. It just doesn't work. There's no need for it. He could just be standing and that would be absolutely fine. But overall, I think it's a decent model. There's some nice detail on the armour. The helmet, whilst big, is not comedy big. And it's somewhat offset by the fact that there is the cloak at the back and the wings to the side kind of draws attention away from how big the helmet is. Also, the actual helmet itself doesn't feel that big, but the kind of carved feathers on it make up a significant amount of the bulk. The thing is, even though they are most likely not actual feathers, judging by the look of them, clearly, they look like they should be, and so they don't seem as weighty or as hefty, which makes a big difference, I feel. And that's a fancy and cool sword as well. Don't know why, I really like the hilt on that sword. Don't know, not really sure why, I just do. Overall, pretty solid. Tell you what, let's go back to the best boys, the warp spiders, because of all the aspect warriors, they just, I don't know why I like them so much, I just do. That concludes, possibly, the range review for the Eldar. Again, some nice stuff in here. Some nice stuff in here that could just do with a bit of an update. If the worst I can say about something is that it looks old, but the design still holds up, then yeah, I mean, the Phoenix Lords themselves could do a lot of work, but for the most part, outside the Swooping Hawks, the Aspect Warriors still look decent. They just need that bit of extra care and attention. Come on, GW. Let's go. Let's have it. Let me know what you think of all of them in the comments down below. Any particular favourites, any pet peeves, any ones that you really don't like. Let me know what you think. If you would like to subscribe to the channel, that would be a lovely thing for you to do. You don't have to. It's entirely up to you. I'm not going to force you to do it. And it doesn't really do that much anyway. It just makes the number go up, which makes me happy. Beyond that, at this point, does YouTube even care? Who knows? Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video, subscribe, all that stuff. Click it if you like, don't click if you don't want to. And there's an affiliate link in the description down below for Element Games, which you can use to support the channel if you would like to do so. I leave it in your capable hands. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.